welcome back. Today I have two lovely guests today that I cannot wait to introduce to you. We have Ella Frank. She's a USA Today best-selling author of the Temptation series, including Try, Take, and Trust, and is the co-author of the fan favorite, do I say this right, Preslock series?
Preslock, yep.
Okay. Her exquisite series has been praised as scorching hot and enticingly sexy. And we also have Brooke. Brooke Blaine is USA Today's best-selling author of contemporary and LGBTQ romance that ranges from comedy to suspense to erotic. The latter has scarred her conservative Southern family for life. We're going to have to talk about that. Oh my gosh. Okay, awesome. You ladies are awesome. First of all, your books are truly beautiful. Thank you so much for putting out such a great set of books. Tell us a little bit about how you guys got started working together as co-authors.
Well, would you like to start?
Do you want to start? You were the first, so you can start.
Okay. Well, I started my writing journey back in 2012, and that's when indie was kind of exploding, indie publishing. And I wrote a book called Exquisite, and that was my very first independent novel. And I put it out into the world, and luckily for me, a wonderful reader came along called Brooke Blaine, and she read the book and wrote a review about it that sort of really touched on a feeling I had about my character. My character, Lena, is a very feisty female, and back in 2012, there were a lot of Bellas and less feisty, more sort of the meek, shy girl, and she was quite feisty, and a lot of women didn't like that about her. But this one wrote me an email and said, I really appreciate Lena. And that was like an instant friendship. And after that, what happened after that, Brooke?
So after that, she emailed me and she said, hey, I want to write a dark romance. Would you want to be a part of my critique team? And it was her third book. It's called Blind Obsession. And she already had a few betas, and I came into it, and I don't know, we just started working together, and it just clicked. I mean, it clicked. And from the get-go, I mean, I'd been trying to sort of write stories, and she was like, can you just hurry up, because I would love to co-author with you. So it really started behind the scenes. You know, I started working with her on her books, and then it became, okay, what can we write together? So
yeah, it was just a very organic, natural progression from one thing to another. And it just, it worked. When you know that you're clicking with someone, you know, like when your brain is on the same page, it just works.
That is awesome.
And it's scary.
How does that even look like together? Do you both outline and plot together? Do you share like a Googled? How does that work to write? This is awesome. These are awesome books, and you have done such a beautiful job with all of them. And how did that look like from start to finish?
Well,
really different. We do it a little different, I think, right?
Yeah. We're a bit of a breed of our own. Most people, when they co-author, you'll hear them say that they take a character each or a chapter each, and they'll write them and then send it to the other author. And when we came together, we knew straight away that wasn't going to work for us. We said, no.
Not just because we're control freaks. Not just
yeah. Because basically, if we write something, we don't want to rewrite it. So, and that was a lot of it. So what we decided to do was write it all together. And this always makes people freak out, but we open a Google Doc, we get on Skype, and we literally write every single chapter together. She'll write a paragraph, maybe longer, and then she'll tag off and say, okay, your turn. And then I just pick it right back up.
Yeah.
That's impressive. After reading the book and knowing that you did that, I'm like, that's an art.
It's the biggest compliment when people say it feels seamless, and it really is, because sometimes we'll go back and read and we can't tell who wrote what. Sometimes it's a word choice that'll tip us off, like, nah, Ella says that. I would never use that word. So, I mean, especially with all the books we've written together now, it just, and we have such different styles individually. So the fact that it works and we can tell what would be something she would say or her characters would say, and being able to write each other's characters.
That's
difficult, but it's so much fun. Like we were doing a scene today where we had to write each other's characters from previous books that we did solo. And we're like, just make sure that it sounds like something that he would say. But yeah, we tag off, and that's how we
actually had someone ask us just recently about the Dare You and Dare Me series, because Bash, I don't know if you've read it yet, but Bash is such a unique character, and that's Brooke's character. And someone had asked, are you both writing him, or is it just one of you? Because he's very unique in the way he talks and sounds and thinks. And when we said, no, we're both writing him, it was like,
I'm very blown away by that, because it is such a seamless book, like you said, that I thought maybe, as I was reading, I was trying to figure out, how did they do, I always like to pick it apart, like the mechanics. How did this work? How did they do this? And that is mind-blowing. I've never heard of people co-authoring that way, and that's really cool. It just makes me have even more respect for the art, because you really can't tell. And it's so fluid. So how long does it take for you guys to write on average one book?
Pretty quickly. When we write separately, it's not as fast. And we do still work with each other on our solo books. We critique each other's work. But when we're writing together, it sometimes takes a month. Sometimes even less. It just kind of depends on the story and how fast it's coming. But this series in particular has been pretty quick, and it's shocking, how we just kind of get in there and we can do it. It's like, if I get stuck, I can tag off to her, or if she gets stuck, she can tag off to me, or as I'm writing, she can throw out ideas and vice versa. So it just makes it so much faster.
Yeah, it makes it so much easier, because when you write by yourself and you get stumped, you're stumped. There's no one to ask for help. But when you're writing together, and someone actually said when we were mentioning that we'll throw out ideas, they were like, oh, I couldn't deal with that. I couldn't deal with someone telling me an idea to put in there while my brain was working. And I think it just depends what sim you get into, and we're so used to it now that now we just throw it out, and it's helpful because you're like, oh, that's a great idea, and you just run with it. So
you feel kind of naked when you have to go back to your own stuff.
Like, what do I do?
Tag off, and I can't just ask her, what would you put here? So
you guys are like Maverick and Goose, right?
Yes, like Maverick and Goose.
Only no one dies. No one dies.
No one dies.
No one dies. No one dies.
No one dies. That is awesome. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you have that just came out. So this one just had your pub day. Congrats on the 27th, right? August 27th. You had Dare Me come out, and you have the third one to this coming out September 27th, right? That one up in the carousel. So for all of you guys watching, you can grab the third book and pre-order it down below. And this is the second one. So my favorite thing about authors is that when you guys put out series, it's like just don't put out one book, just because I don't like it when it ends. So when I know there's three, I'm like, yes. So so that's really cool that you can try that. And then you have your Fallen Angel series, which we also have linked down below. So if you had to pick a favorite child, who would your favorite series be?
That's like co-authored or solo? You can't ask us that.
Co-authored for now, and then we'll get to
want solo or co-authored?
Oh, co-authored.
Okay, I'm not going to say this is our favorite. I'm not going to go there. However, I will say every book that we write together is so much fun. But not the very first one we did, the first we did, where we did Ace from the Press Lock series. That whole series was so much fun. It was just, it just came so easily, and it was so much fun. And we just threw everything at that series.
And we realized, I think go ahead.
No, it was kind of like this Dare to Try one. We each had characters in another solo series, and we brought them together. And I don't know, it was so much fun. So maybe I think that was the moment we realized
what we could do with our worlds. We realized the potential of mixing them and giving our readers those Easter eggs and having little characters that they knew from before that would make them want to know more about them. And that was the fun part of Presslock. We discovered that we could add in characters to further bring back old characters to make people fall in love. And it was just so much fun. And one of the best examples was we were writing a lawyer for Ace in Ace. He's a big Hollywood star, and Brooke was like, what if we make Logan from the Temptation series his lawyer? And that was the moment we went, we can mix this together.
We did. It's selfish too. It's selfish too, because I'm like, ooh, then I could write one of her guys, one of these guys that I really love. And she was dying to write Ace, and she's like, don't you want to do a series with me so I can write Ace? And so we do that with each other. But I love this latest series too. I mean, each one is so different. We had a fighter pilot series that we watched, Top Gun. You said Maverick and Goose. Yep. Oh my God, that was so much fun. And then we had the Rockstar series. They're all just such different vibes. It depends on what
mood we're in.
Even if you've never read books before, they're highly entertaining, something new, something different, and just so well written. You really do fall in love with the characters. All of a sudden, I'm not looking at firefighters the same. We drive by one and I'm like,
if a truck pulls up beside you, you're suddenly looking at it.
You're like, hello?
Need to be rescued.
Yes. So as single authors, what are you, I guess we'll start with Ella. Tell us a little bit about what you do as a single author and some of your favorite, well, I mean, not favorite, but your books that you have recently put out, and a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, you gave me a great introduction, by the way, better than I could have given myself.
Well, I did. I got it from somebody.
But no, I always loved romance. I grew up reading romance novels from like a wee little lass. So that was sort of ingrained in my brain. My family was reading thrillers and murder mysteries, and I was rose-colored glasses. So it was sort of a natural progression that was what I wanted to write. As for where I'm at with my genres, I used to go back and forth. I used to do MF and MM. I'm solidly in the MM genre now. And that's great. I love the MM genre. I love the MF genre as well. And if I eventually can flip back and forth, I will. But right now I'm enjoying the men, and I seem to have a good footing there. And I love exploring different male emotions. I feel like they're very different, to the female psyche. And sometimes that's fun to get into. It's a good way to sort of get out of your own head and get into that. And I like showing that. As for the books that I've written, they range from super sexy to sweet. I would say this series behind me, the Try, Take, and Trust series, definitely starts ultra sexy, but it moves into and tackles a lot of the feels and the heart. And it's one of my favorite series I've ever written. If I had to pick a child that I love better than everyone else. They feel so real. So to me, someone could ask me anything about Logan and Tate and I could tell them in 5 seconds flat. It's like they exist in reality living next door to me. But I love that. Recent books, I love the Chicago verse that I've sort of created around them. I've spun off so many series from Logan and Tate, and I'm going to continue in that world, and I love bringing my readers back to that world. But I also like, stepping outside too. So we'll see. We'll see where it takes me.
I will say, Ella and Brooke, you both have it on lock, these characters, because sometimes you read a book. Well, I mean, sometimes I read a book and halfway through I'm like, what are their names again? And then sometimes you read one and you're like so emotionally invested that you'll hear it like Kieran somewhere and you're like, I know that. Oh, wait, I don't know them. Like you're so invested in the characters too that you'll meet someone. You're like, oh, I know someone else named that. You're like, they're not real.
Yeah, they're not real.
So you guys have, I feel like you can see them, you can feel them. They are, and that tells me that you guys are awesome at what you do.
Oh, thank you. It's been difficult though, because with Bash specifically, we've never been able to find an image of him. I have a very specific, clear picture in my head of what he looks like, and we just can't find him anywhere. He doesn't exist in real life, not the way he exists in my head. And so, we couldn't put him on the covers. We decided to do the covers with Kieran and have Bash represented in the colors. And so, yeah, just because he's the only person I've never been able to actually find, somewhere in real life, anyone that looks like him. He's
unique.
Yeah, he's unique. Yeah.
In a good way. I mean, I feel like I'd be curious to see if your vision and mine are the same, I'm sure, but
that would be great.
Yeah. So what about you, Brooke? Tell us a little bit about you and your single writing and what you've been working on too.
Okay. Well, I also started an MF romance. The first book I ever wrote was a co-authored book with Ella, and it was a male-female romance, and it was a little bit on the not darker side, but naughtier side, we should say. And then I ventured into, like, for me, I never really grew up reading romance. I grew up watching romantic comedies, and that's still like my happy place. So when I started writing, it was really movies in my head. So like my LA Liaison series, it's a male-female series, and they're romantic comedies based on 4 single girls in LA. And it's kind of a mesh between like Devil Wears Prada, Sex and the City, Bridget Jones, like all my favorite romantic comedies all combined into that series. And so that's where I started. And then in one of the books, there was a character named Ace, and he's this big Hollywood action star who hasn't come out. And everybody wrote me about that character. They wanted,
including me.
And so I had never expected to write a male-male romance, and because, it was kind of her thing. And I thought, oh, I'm not going to step on toes, because it wasn't really a big genre at all.
So Chris, though, because think about how we are with regular romance. It's like saying you can't write a romance because someone else
exactly.
I know, it's so silly. At the same time, it was so much smaller back then, and I just kind of thought, oh, it's her thing, But when she convinced me, no, he needs a story. He's a really interesting character. Let's do it together. I couldn't resist, and it came so easily that I thought, I could do this. And so then I started my South Haven series, where Bash has come from. And that's a small town kind of based around Hilton Head Island off of South Carolina, kind of that sort of beachy vibe. And then I also did an Unforgettable Duet, which is, if you like amnesia love stories, it's definitely one of those. And that one just came when I was sitting at a red light. It's the most clear I've ever had a story just hit me out of nowhere, and I had to write it. I wrote that one insanely fast because I had to, it just came out, and I wish every story was that way, but it's not, unfortunately. Coming up next, I've got a really, really exciting contemporary romance that is going to spin off from this series, this Dare to Try series. So I'm excited for that.
Nice. Jody says, Ace and Dylan are my absolute favorites of yours.
Dylan are Presslett guys. They're so much fun. We had fun researching that one. We went to Disney when we were at Disney World at the time, and we went into the Grand Floridian, and we totally based a massive scene in one of the books off of
the Grand Floridian
hotel. Yeah. So yeah, we had a good time with those.
So Ella, what are you currently working on as a solo writer? Are you working on anything, or are you guys just co-authoring right now?
I have like Brooke, I have a contemporary romance series that's going to spin off of the Dare series. So we're both doing a spin off of that at the end of this. But in between there, and I don't want to jinx myself, I'm writing a darker MMM romance. It's a gothic. It's not a romance, actually. It's a gothic novel. So it's going to hopefully come out of my brain.
She's been dying to tell this story for a long time. So if it's not now, it is coming.
It's coming.
Yes, it'll come one day, hopefully now.
When it's meant to be.
Yes, but so they're the two things. I've got, that's first, the gothic MMM, so it's 3 M's, and then the contemporary spin-off series from this one. So.
And what are you working on right now as a solo author, Brooke?
So as soon as we finish the edits for book 3, I'll go into the spinoff series. And Ella and I are trying to get on this planning a year in advance thing. So we do have some ideas for solo and co-authored things, but it's going to be an interconnected but standalone contemporary romance series in MM. So hopefully the first book will be out before the end of this year.
And one of our watchers says, please write the wedding of Halo and Viper.
Never say never. Never say never. We said never one time. Actually, we said it a couple of times, but yeah, we can't say never anymore.
Yeah, I learned my lesson to never say never with Robbie from my Temptation series. I said I would never write his story with the first 3 books, but then I grew him up because people kept asking for him. So I grew him up, and when I put him in the last 3, 4 years later, I loved him enough that I spun him off, and man, I love that kid. I love him so much. He's one of my favorites. So I guess
you wanted to strangle him in the first 3 books and then love him in the last 3 books, right?
Where do you guys draw your inspiration from the most?
I would say a lot of mine comes from music. Music is huge for me. Sometimes if I'm watching a show and someone says something like a quote, or a movie with a quote, or even if someone just says something to me in real life and I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. It's just, it comes from so many different spots, but music is the number one for me, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel that in the themes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, for those, we had a very specific playlist for that one.
Do tell, is it on Spotify?
It's on a private Spotify, but I guess we could share it one day. We almost hesitate to share anything on Spotify because we have such weird choices for our where I just feel like we're gonna get judged if we share those
I love one of the things I do when I'm researching my authors is I always check you guys to make sure, see if you guys have any interviews on Spotify or any playlists. And one of the last authors I had on there, she had a whole Spotify playlist. And the funny thing is when I listened to it, it was very off the beaten path of music, but it all matched up to everything in my head as I read the book.
Right.
It was really cool.
Well, I know that there's specific songs for books that people really identify with. Like I've got a couple from the Temptation and Confession series that people constantly say, yes, that goes with that. But as for a whole list, I feel like it's specific to me, but I don't know that it would be specific to everyone else. Yeah, because I'm over here listening to like Barbara Streisand.
Oh my God, she does. She really does.
And it just wouldn't match what anyone else is thinking. So,
and everybody has different tastes. You know, sometimes our readers will share songs, and we're like, oh, it's not what we see in our head, but I love that it's what they see in their head, and vice versa. That's why I hesitate because, you know, I mean, you just never know. I love 80s hair bands, and so maybe that's what people saw when they saw Viper. Like, maybe not. But
they're all seeing like Muse in this, and we're like looking at fun.
I know, and Brooke's over here like, let's watch another Guns N' Roses video.
Jody watching this live said, I have made a playlist based on the songs in the books. It makes me so happy when there's music. Oh, yeah. I love it. I love music and books. Those are, I mean, I don't know how we do life without music and books. So thank you guys.
No, I agree. I agree.
So, do you both have any advice? Well, first, before I ask that question, I have to ask what everybody's thinking, Brooke. What does your family think? Your southern family think about your writing? Because it doesn't even matter what kind of romance you write. Most people's families are like,
Yeah.
So with what you write, what does your family think? Your bio said that, so I have to ask.
Oh my God. So I live in the deep South. You know, my family is all from Georgia and Alabama. And when I first started, my first solo book was a romantic suspense book. And even my Mimi, my grandma, she read it and she loved it. Her only suggestion was don't say so many GD words. That was the only note I got. And then they read the romantic comedy. But with the MM, they're like, how do you even know how any of that works? Like, what are you doing? I mean,
how do you know?
They're supportive because they know I enjoy it. Yeah, but I think they're just kind of like,
they're like, we have questions.
Yeah, they do have questions. They do. And I'm like, well, they're answered in the book if you want to read it, you know?
Like, there's this thing called research for books.
Yeah, no. And you know, and I have a healthy gay friendship with lots of guys. And, you know, I mean, you know, you hear stories. And I don't know. I mean, I guess the family is conservative, and I don't think they're necessarily ever going to read some of the things I do, but I actually would prefer them not to, honestly. If I knew the family was reading some of these scenes, I always say
different strokes for different folks, and it's fun to try different books and see different perspectives. That's how we learn, and that's how we understand, you know, other cultures, other societies, other point of views. And I never want to read a book and think like everyone thinks. That's the beauty of books, is that we can learn to think and see other things too.
See, it's 100%. I agree with that 100%. Yeah, there's something to be said for people who are open-minded, for sure.
Yeah.
I think they'd enjoy it if they tried it, but I'm not hating that they don't. Maybe try Ella's. So
Hey, on the flip side, you've got my family who puts it out on the coffee table.
Yes, her graphic novel.
I have a graphic novel of Try, which is quite detailed. It's very R-rated in spots, and my father purchased that so he could put it on the coffee table to shock people.
I love your dad already.
Yeah, he's very proud. They're
Australians. See, Australians, very open-minded.
They're like, oh, look what my daughter just did.
And they're like, no.
Really?
One of our viewers said, reading How Marcus St. James Fell by Gabe was wonderful. I was so moved when the tattoo was revealed. Thanks, Ella.
Oh, thank you. I love Marcus and Gabe.
They're one of my favorite couples that you've done.
Yeah, they're one of my top 3 now, for sure. I just fell in love with them this year. They were exactly what I needed this year. Exactly what I needed. So
how did you guys do? I mean, this would have been a very nice hobby artwork to do during the pandemic. Sorry, my dog's barking at something.
I'm surprised my cat's not in here.
I know. Mine's
usually it sets off other people's dogs barking, and I feel really bad, but my dog, you know, it's real life. But how did you guys do during the pandemic? Because I can only imagine how stressful it had to have been to try to work and create as an artist during such a stressful time. How did you guys do with that? Let's start with Ella, I guess.
I channeled it into my book. I actually wrote a series around a news network called ENN. So, which, by the way, stands for Ella's News Network. And I was watching a lot of, obviously, the news, and I wrote about the news. I wrote about primetime news with Alexander Thorne, and he was quite obviously based around Anderson Cooper. For anyone who's watched or read the book, that's who I was watching. So I just channeled what I was doing. I mean, obviously the book is not about what was going on last year. There's no pandemic. There's no politics. It's all love story and a bodyguard sort of best friend falling for each other, enemies to lovers. So it's got nothing to do politically with anything. It was just a way for me to channel what I was doing, which was a lot of news watching, into my work. And it really helped because I picked up a lot of things. I looked at the sets they were on. I was really quite interested in learning about different things. And so that's what I did. And I thoroughly enjoyed every second of it. And ENN.
ENN. Now I'm never going to see it the same.
No.
What about you, Brooke?
I did not do so well, honestly. I live with my awesome cat, and it's been a very strange 2020, 2021. Again, I'm in the South. It's a little bit different with people maybe following the rules here. So I didn't want to leave my house. I didn't see a lot of friends and family. My headspace was not in a great headspace as far as I was so worried about what was happening in the world. Yes, with the election, with the pandemic, it was just extremely stressful for me. I woke up and I was like, God, what today? You know what I mean? And it didn't leave a lot of, I know some people like Ella can channel it, but a lot of other writers I talked to, we were all on the same boat. It was, I don't know how to create with this headspace. I couldn't do it. It was exhausting and it just didn't work out for me. And I struggled and I tried and it just wasn't working.
It wasn't easy in general, though the words came out of my head, luckily.
Yeah. Words came out of mine, they just weren't any good.
They came out of hers. It just wasn't the way she wanted it to go.
It wasn't right. Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, I think it was what would work and how you could cope with it. So I think it was a good way for me to just forget. Because while I was writing a news anchor, I wasn't writing about, like I said, anything to do with what was going on out there. I was creating a love story within it. So it's just everyone deals with things differently. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it helped me. And, we tried with Brooke all different sorts of strategies.
Yeah, it was all about self-care over here. It was try not to watch the news, try to watch something happy, try to read if you can, just trying to get in a better headspace, really.
That's all in the past now, right?
I mean, I've got my mojo is back.
She's back.
Yes. Well, I think I can speak for a lot of people that we're so grateful for good books like yours and good authors that show up, because books, I think, can be such a place of solace and refuge in tough times. And
agreed.
I mean, that's my go-to when I'm stressed and having things going on. It's, where's my book?
Yeah. It's an escape. It's an escape.
Sure. And I'm so grateful that, we happened to do a job where we were able to get through a pandemic, and be able to work from home and have people read our books as an escape. Super grateful for that. I mean, it just could have been so much worse, it really could have.
Well, imagine if we didn't have books to turn to.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
it'd just be so sad.
It's so important. It's such a good stress relief and an outlet, a healthy outlet. And so I just thank you guys. What advice would you two have for aspiring writers?
Ooh. So much, right?
The number one thing would be research your craft. As there's so much information now. I mean, there's almost too much information, but research the top 10 things you should do as an indie author, because there's so many people giving advice. Look for the people who are giving good advice. That's number one. Like Alessandra Torre, she has a great platform to learn from, and she gives solid advice, fantastic advice. And I'm sure Brooke could go into detail.
Put her in the chat. What's her name?
Alessandra Torre. She has an Inkers group on Facebook, and they do conventions, writing conventions every year. We just had one this past June, I believe. And so that's a great place for aspiring writers to get started. I think she's doing a boot camp soon, specifically for people who want to get started and just don't know where to do so. And I would also add to that too, mental health is so important when you're in any kind of creative industry. It's very easy to let other people get in your headspace, and it's so important to protect that. So I know when we first started, we got some reviews on Goodreads. That's where we met. We met on Goodreads.
Yes.
But it became obvious that it wasn't a place where we as writers felt comfortable, because it would, just one word, you could have 100 great reviews and you might see one that's not so good, and then you feel terrible about yourself. And really, it's just over the years, you get a thicker skin. Now it doesn't bother me at all. But at first, it could get into your headspace, and that's the last thing an aspiring writer, somebody who's new in the industry, needs. You really just want to filter everything out, trust yourself, get a good team around you, and really keep your head down. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing or the drama over here or social media. Just
because the thing is, everyone's level of success and their journey is going to be completely different from your own. You're going to have a different journey from the person next to you. I'm going to have a different journey from my co-author. You can never compare yourself. I mean, you can, but it's not really worth your time to compare yourself to everyone around you that you think is maybe doing better than you, and you don't know what they're doing over there. So really, like Brooke said, just focus on yourself, focus on the craft of writing, and really get yourself a great editor.
And a great cover designer.
Yes.
Great editor, great cover designer. You're set.
Awesome. Right. I have to read this to you because it's so nice. It says, it's from Jody. She says, your books have been a savior this last 18 months, especially going back to previous series, like revisiting old friends and having that feel-good reunion.
Oh,
I know. That's
Thank you, Jody.
It's hard because, there's so much negativity out there, but you guys really are making an impact on so many people, and they really do treasure your work and appreciate you, especially in a genre that isn't as developed as it could be. And so showing up consistently in that space is just so beautiful for that community, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's growing every day too. The genre and LGBTQ in general is just exploding right now, and I think it's really important to get those stories out there, both just romance and happiness, and just show what can be like. I get so many emails from people saying, this is the first time I've read an MM and it's opened my eyes, or I've been able to have a conversation with my son or my daughter. And then I'll get an email from like a gay man telling me that, he had a similar experience. And sometimes you just touch people that you don't realize you're going to touch in a really positive way. And that makes everything worth it. It really does.
Yeah.
And then someone else said, all these books are funny. One reminds me of a series on Netflix called Lucifer.
We love Lucifer. Which one
reminds you of Lucifer? Because I
don't know.
Freddie.
Which one reminds you, Freddie? That's who said that. So okay, I have to ask you guys this because I think I saw this on one of your websites. Do you guys have a Facebook group?
Yes.
Okay, and what is it called so I can tell them to find you?
It's called Brooke and Ella's Naughty Umbrella.
Okay.
And I believe it's like whatever the Facebook link is / the umbrellas, which umbrella Brooke and Ella, obviously.
Okay, I love that.
Yep. Romance covered, I think is what our slogan is. But that's where we are. If you want to find us and chat, that's where we are. That's where we respond. Those are our people who get first dibs on anything and everything. So yeah, our Facebook would be.
And we're in there quite often, so we're very active in there as well. So
it's a happy.
You have questions.
And Ella, what is your Instagram handle?
Ella Frank 1.
Yeah,
Ella Frank 1. Yeah.
Okay. And what about you, Brooke?
Mine is Brooke Blaine 1.
Okay.
Somebody stole the Ella Frank and the Brooke Blaine, so we had to add
Rude.
Oh,
well, in the chat, people are saying it's an amazing group, and I'm just so glad that you guys joined me on the show today because this was awesome.
Oh,
thank you
we're
so
so
much
happy to be here.
It's always nice to.
You're always welcome back, and write some more books because we need to share them.
Oh, we will.
Dare Me book 2 is out today. So
Today.
Pub day.
It's pub day. Crazy day over here. But thank you so much for having us.
Awesome. Well, thanks for showing up here to celebrate your pub day. That's really exciting. And I have linked Truth or Dare down below, so you guys can go ahead and pre-order that. And what that does is you can pre-order it, so on the day it comes out, it'll be immediately downloaded right away to your Kindle, which is my favorite. Do you guys ever open your Kindle and you're like, oh,
yes,
it's like Christmas? So you guys
this like pops up,
and it'll pop right up too. And that is really nice. Somebody said, girls say you're going to put Bash on the cover of the 3rd book. I need to see him.
We can't find him.
We can't find him.
If you have any ideas, send
put him in the naughty umbrella. Yes. If you have a Bash in your head, put him in the naughty umbrella. We'd love to see it.
Wouldn't that be funny if somebody sent it and that you're like, yes.
That's it. Oh my God, I would die. I would love it. I'd call that person up and beg them to be on the cover.
That is awesome. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show. I appreciate having you as guests, and we can find all your books right here on Amazon, link below. You guys can go ahead and pre-order the new Truth or Dare and get it right on your Kindle or get it right to your door. And they're beautiful books. I'm a little picky over my books, and they're beautiful, beautiful cover, just beautifully written, just edited so lovely. And I love them all on my shelf now. I have to get more. Thank you guys so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Have a good day.
All right.